Spark Central, and today it will be all about chatbots. That's also why we invited Anthony today. He's from ChatLayer. He will join us and he will also share some knowledge with us. But before we start, I want to give you some practical guidelines. In the next 30 minutes, we'll share some valuable content. But the first 20 minutes, it will be Spark Central and ChatLayer who will be presenting. So sit back and relax. During this part, you can still ask all your questions in the chat on the right side. And the last 10 minutes, we'll try to answer all of your questions. Also, a quick reminder, this masterclass consists of 5 webinars. So if you're interested in one of our upcoming webinars, you can still sign up. And when you follow all 5 of our webinars, you will receive a certificate and a gift package. Like I mentioned before, we have 2 speakers today. It's Anthony, business developer at ChatLayer, and Goran, or head of product at Spark Central. First up today is Goran. So Goran, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Lisa. And thank you for joining this webinar. It's my first webinar ever, so I will give it my best. In the following 20 minutes, we're going to address the question why chatbots on messaging channels are great partners for your customer service agents. And before we do that, I wanted to start by looking at messaging adoption rates first. If you were in our previous webinar last week, you've already seen this slide. Messaging apps are very popular and lead the download charts in app stores. This is data worldwide for iOS and Android. And if you would look at our customers, if they are launching a WhatsApp or a Messenger channel, this is typically what we would see. Customers are immediately adopting the channels. They start sending messages from day one, and it's quite common to see 100 to 200% growth rates, especially in the first months. So why is that? And I think the answer is rather simple. People always seek the path of least resistance. By introducing messaging channels, you are making it effortless for customers to contact your brand. Your brand is very accessible, and it also makes that customers are sending you questions on WhatsApp, for example, that they would previously look up themselves on the website. And the customer benefits. They don't have to queue for service. They can simply ask a question and wait for you to respond, and they can continue with whatever they were doing. And the result is great CSAT scores, great customer satisfaction scores. But from a financial perspective, the impact is also that you would likely or probably need additional agents to deal with these larger volumes. And that brings us to the inevitable question on how can we make messaging an efficient customer service channel. So let's look at what Gartner has to say in this respect about digital customer service and support technologies. They recently published a study in March of this year, and what they are recommending is to take a self-service and an automation-first approach to deal with the growing contact volumes. And they're not only recommending this, they're also predicting that by 2023, 30% of customer service organizations are using some form of AI to also deliver proactive customer service, and therefore improving customer experience and at the same time limiting the pressure on your contact center. So knowing this, let's look at 3 perspectives on why self-service and automation first makes so much sense. And we're going to look at this from the following 3 perspectives: from the perspective of your customer, from the perspective of your customer service team, your agents, and from a financial perspective. So why is this better for your customer? So your brand will become accessible 24/7. If you start introducing virtual agents, chatbots in your customer service operations, and even if your chatbot is not able to answer all questions, it can still collect data and set expectations with the customer on when they can expect a response from your brand. If you are continuously improving your chatbot, it will become smarter over time, and the overall quality of your customer service will improve. And you can take it even further and have your chatbot reach out on the moments of truth to your customers. So you're really making it effortless. So again, increasing customer satisfaction scores. If you're looking at it from the perspective of your employees, your customer care agents can really focus on conversations where human empathy, where the human touch makes a difference, and also where the complexity makes the conversations much more interesting. So they don't have to focus so much on repetitive tasks like identifying customers or answering frequently asked questions. And finally, it also helps to improve the routing of conversations. So if human support is needed, the conversation can be routed to the agent with the right skill set. So finally, from the financial perspective, we're just at the beginning. Chatbots are still at its infancy, and they will get better over time. The technology is still maturing. The smarter the chatbot gets, the less pressure on your customer service teams. Also, if chatbots are dealing with repetitive tasks, agents can really focus on building the customer relationship. And what we see across the board is loyal customers stay longer and they spend more at your brand. Again, another point to mention is that taking away the repetitive tasks will also make the job more meaningful, more interesting for your agents, and thus you will see a reduced agent churn in your contact center, so saving on recruitment and training costs. So I think knowing this will be very interesting to look at chatbots, and it's no wonder that so many brands have started to experiment with chatbots, and it's promising, right? It's very it seems very attractive. You connect a chatbot to your WhatsApp channel, to your Facebook Messenger channel, and you have started to automate your customer service. Then reality kicks in, and I think most of us have all had this experience. The chatbot replies, "I don't understand your question. Can you please rephrase the same question?" So obviously you don't want this. And then the question could arise, so should we stay away from chatbots altogether for customer service? And actually, many of our customers have felt the same way. But what they've actually found, if you take the right approach, you can already fully automate 20 to 50% of your customer service conversations. So we definitely think it's very interesting to look at this. And the question then is, for Anthony, what is the right approach to start with a bot project? So Anthony, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Goran. I'm Anthony from Chatlayer, and I'll get back to Chatlayer in a bit. But I believe this sounds very familiar to you. You're talking to a chatbot, and at some point you get this reply. And there is a belief that this is the norm. But is it? How can you provide a better experience in this? And how can you deliver a truly smart chatbot? There are different ways to achieve that, and we'll cover them. I'd like to highlight them first and then go over them. The first one is to have a powerful AI engine. The second is to have a good chatbot to human collaboration. And third is to have an awesome conversational design. Goran, you can switch it over to the next slide. Thank you. I'd like to note that if you have questions, feel free to pop them in the question page on the webinar tool, and we'll cover them at the end of the webinar. So Chatlayer is a platform, a no-coding platform on which our clients built their own chatbots and voice bots. And what we realized is that clients using chatbots as a collaboration tool with humans achieved better results in user experience and conversions. So we'd like to focus a bit more on that human collaboration, on that collaboration with humans, and how to optimize that. First is the channels. You need to consider strategically on which channels you will launch your human agents and your chatbot. So you need to make it easy for your customers to contact you. Be reachable through their preferred channels. Second is the intelligence of the chatbot. A virtual agent should be able to access the same information as a human would. So accessing your CRM data, your customer's phone number, the client history, and all that stuff. Also, the virtual agent should be smart enough to understand when it's time to hand over the conversation to an agent. But not only just to an agent, but to the right agent, based on skills. So in what language is the user talking to your chatbot? What is the type of question? Is it a billing question? Is it a technical question? And thus route it to the right human agent immediately. And third is to continuously measure the success of the full interaction. So not only the chatbot, not only the human part, but the full interaction. And we will cover some key metrics later in this presentation. Goran, you can, yes, thank you. So why is the human touch so important? Well, in a recent study, we found that consumers have become increasingly fed up with the growing disappearance of a company's human touches. 40% of British survey respondents said that one of the top 3 keys to a happy customer service interaction was that opportunity to speak with a human representative. So have a smart chatbot that answers all the repetitive questions, but do have humans ready to take over when needed is the way to go forward. Then I'd like to highlight some popular use cases about chatbots. So first is obviously customer support, and that's why we're highlighting this webinar and the webinar series with Spark Central. So for example, if you have repetitive workflows such as customer identification, that's a great use case for chatbots to optimize that first part of every interaction. Of course, your bots can go further than that and answer frequently asked questions, file claims through a chatbot. In example, an insurance chatbot is a great example of that. And lastly, provide status updates using push notifications through that chatbot, and also again the preferred channel of your users. Now, smart IVRs, you're all familiar with classic IVRs, and they're just annoying and boring. So why not use the current AI technology to spice it up? Let people ask their question, and using AI, the voice bot will redirect the conversation to the right department. But if you are going to use classic IVR, why not deflect that phone conversation to a chatbot on WhatsApp? So for example, that could be option 1. And there is a great video demo on this on the homepage of Spark Central. So I definitely advise you to watch it. And the last popular use case is conversational marketing. So you can increase conversions on landing pages, and instead of trying to push down cost, you're actually going to drive up revenue. And who doesn't like new revenue? So we've designed a chatbot maturity model. And we did this to give our clients a brief overview of the chatbot maturity landscape. What is a basic bot? What is a smart chatbot? And what can you generally expect from them? So a very easy script or click bot will just use buttons to get you to the right answers. There is no AI in that bot. A frequently asked question bot could use just a simple AI to just give you the right answer and nothing more. But there is so much data in conversations. So simple bots have to start from scratch every time you say something. Don't be that kind of bot. Use the context. So a contextual bot, one that uses an advanced AI engine, works with your CRM data and answers questions personally. And in the future, we would be looking at an omnibot, one that is using natural language generation and is actually going to create new answers themselves and optimize the conversation, the conversational design. That is something definitely worth looking to, but that's a bit far off into the future right now. We have defined some success criteria for your first chatbot project. And the first one is education. What is the scope of your chatbot? What is a bot realistically realistically capable of solving today in your customer service context. Second is to understand how you can turn your customer support into a profit center. And third, how you can use great conversational design to optimize that, the previous point, make your customer service into a profit center, and thus optimize the chatbot's efficiency in doing so. And that leads us to the following point, which is strategy. What shouldn't you do? What should you do? And what you should avoid is try to build in-house tools such as a bot platform, because that will just become an IT project, and the time to market will be too long, and a chatbot shouldn't be a one-time IT project. So what you should do is choose a flexible and intuitive tool that business users can actually build it and be responsible for that in-house development of that chatbot. And then the last point is AI and maintenance. Since it's not a one-time IT project, you should monitor and improve continuously. Add new topics to that chatbot, keep the conversation fun and engaging. Then what is the general bot implementation approach? You're first going to start with a clear bot strategy and the bot goals. If you're going to build a conversational marketing bot, that will mean you probably want to increase your customer experience and your sales. So if you add a chatbot that helps visitors dynamically based on what you know about them, what they've clicked on your website, things like that. And more in this context of this webinar is a customer support chatbot. So again, you're probably going to try to increase customer experience and decrease your operational costs. So by adding a chatbot on a login page might reduce a lot of incoming voice calls to your support. And we have a great example of AG Insurance that did this. AG Insurance is a leading insurance company that has decreased overall incoming support calls significantly by adding a chatbot to their login page. And a popular question around this bot implementation approach is, how long does this take? How long should we consider building our first bot? And if you have that question in your mind right now, please drop it into the chat, and we'll come back to it when we're at the question, the Q&A. So after covering this, Goran, you can click to the next slide, please. After having covered the bot implementation approach, the strategy, etc., just this webinar in general, my question to you is, does this sound complicated and expensive? There is also a general belief around that. But think again, even with low volumes, our clients can achieve 30 to 50% savings on operational costs if they're building a chatbot for their customer support, which should decrease the load to the human agents. So the idea in that approach is to start small, learn, repeat, make that chatbot bigger and smarter. And then I'd like to end my part of the webinar with some pro tips on how you can position your first chatbot. And one of the first things and very important aspects is to set the expectations to the user. By making it clear what the chatbot can and cannot do, it will make it easy for the user to interact with that chatbot. So it's essential to be very transparent, honest, and modest with regards to the abilities of your chatbot. The second one is a very important one, and it comes back to the first slide where I started talking, is to handle unexpected situations elegantly. So errors will happen, even with the most sophisticated systems. But by handling them well, your bot will stand out from the rest. So for example, you're using context. You're not just saying, I'm sorry, I didn't understand you. You're saying, I'm sorry, I can't help you with weather questions, but I can help you with the following, and you provide dynamic answers. Because by using a great AI system, you're probably going to be able to predict what the users were actually trying to figure out or ask you, even though your chatbot doesn't know the answer to that question. Third is to train your NLP model with not understood expressions. What does that mean? Your chatbot is going to receive questions from your users, which it has not been trained on, or new types of new ways of asking questions. And you want to add that to your NLP, so your AI system, to make it smarter and to prevent not understood expressions. Whatever the function of your chatbot, your bot is going to be a brand ambassador. So link it to your brand and let it embody your values, your corporate values. And lastly, the whole point throughout this webinar is have people ready to take over and drive up the the user experience, thanks to that human to chatbots and chatbot to human collaboration. It works both ways. Goran, back to you.
Yes, thank you, Anthony, for that. It seems my video turned black, so sorry about that. I just wanted to talk a little bit about measuring success. And I think we're seeing many similarities between human and virtual agents, and therefore you can also reuse several metrics that you would use for human agents also to measure the success of your chatbot conversation. So you can look at the number of closed conversations and the topics, the amount of messages per conversation, but also customer satisfaction scores. There are also some chatbot-specific measures, of course. And I think it's important to look at what bot flows were not completed, giving you opportunities to improve bot flows, or what are the customer questions, intents, how you would call them in a chatbot world. What are the intents that the bot did not recognize and was unable to handle, and therefore needed to hand over to a human agent? And that also brings you to the last metric, which I think is really key to the success, is what percentage of your conversations was fully handled by the bot, and what percentage still needed to be handled by a human agent as well. So some key metrics to consider. So rounding up here with some key takeaways, I think we've made this point clear over and over again during the past 20 minutes, that the handover from a chatbot to human is essential. Don't just start with a chatbot without a fallback scenario. You do need to start with a fallback, otherwise you might just run into this disaster. Start small, learn and repeat, how Anthony said it, but make it a strategic project. And conversational design is key. Your chatbot has a personality, and the personality should match your brand. So it's really important to think about conversational design right from the beginning. And monitoring and improving is obvious. You're also monitoring and coaching and training and retraining your customer care staff. So the same thing applies for chatbots. Maybe the benefit of chatbots is that they don't forget, and they can service many more customers. And if you do all of this right, you can definitely realize interesting cost savings. So that brings us to the Q&A, Lisa. Were there any questions?
Okay, thank you, Goran and Anthony. If you still have questions, you can ask them in the chat. I have one question from Anita. Do you suggest to start with FIQ bot and then later switch on to the contextual bot, or just start with this contextual bot? Our primary language is not English, so I'm afraid that we have some language problems with the contextual bots. I don't know if...
Fantastic question. I'll answer. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right, perfect. So I'd like to answer that question in two parts. First is, so the chatbot maturity model, which you're referring to, the frequently asked question bot and contextual bot. When we say you can start small and learn, we don't mean you need to start with a click bot and then gradually go up into the maturity model of your chatbot. You can start in one layer and start small there. When we say start small, it means start with a limited scope of your bot. That means you're going to build a chatbot that first answers, let's say, 50 different topics. And then you're gradually adding new frequently asked questions and topics. But you shouldn't be starting with a very limited click bot and then a little bit of AI, you should start working with the tools that are existing right now to deliver that better customer experience, to hand over the conversation with the right skills and information. So definitely start with a contextual bot, and then just start smaller in that aspect. And then the second thing you are mentioning is very interesting, the language part, which we haven't touched based on in this webinar. But actually, Chatlayer has its own NLP AI engine, which is language independent. And that's one of the most unique things about Chatlayer, and all of our clients that need multilingual chatbots are very fond of it. So if you'd like to know more about that, feel free to get in touch. But anyway, chatbots from Chinese, Arabic to English and French, whatever you like it to be, is one of the core aspects of Chatlayer.
Okay, I think that answered the question.
I think that answers the question.
I have also a question from Marcus. He says 30 to 50% of operational cost is quite a generic expression. Do you have something more precise? I don't know if that's easy to answer.
Yeah, obviously. Goran will have very precise use cases, as well as Chatlayer will have. So the example that I've given around AG Insurance is by developing a chatbot on their login page, they decreased phone call support with 25%, and depending on the use case, that's going to be more like 40%, or maybe Goran, you have other examples to be more precise. Obviously, this is a range.
It's indeed a range, and I think for customers specifically, there's definitely examples. And then also what we see is there's an increase, right? You start from day one, you launch your chatbot. It's capable of handling the first use cases. So it's also a growing model. That's also why the range is broad, and it also really depends on the use case. There are use cases which can almost be fully automated right from the start, where other use cases are more complex and still require human involvement. So it's hard to give a specific number, but definitely this is the range where you should realistically look at if you're considering chatbots.
Okay, thank you so much. Laura also has an interesting question. Do we have an example of a really good bot that we can all try? So I don't know if we have a good example of that.
That's a great question. I'm going to try to find a link to it, and let me post it into the comments.
Okay.
Meanwhile, let's answer another question.
Okay, yeah, I'm going to one of Marcus' questions. Isn't it frustrating to have the bot with such a limited capability?
Yes, I think that's a perfectly good point. On the other hand, what we're seeing is that if you take the approach that you're building a bot, so you're building a bot that can handle many more topics, and you put that live, you do not know what to expect. You do not know how customers will start interacting with it. So I think as these new platforms now are very business user friendly, and if you train staff on how to build bots, you can rapidly expand to other topics. But more the recommendation is more to start small, and that's also where the elegant handover that was mentioned becomes important. So if there's a topic that the bot cannot handle, you don't even have to have the bot say to the customer, I'm not able to handle your question. You can also do an immediate handover, and it will be a seamless experience from the end customer. So there are ways to deal with that in the beginning if you have enough staff in your contact center.
Okay. One question from Alexandra. How do you capture customer satisfaction? Are there surveys available that could be integrated for Facebook and Twitter?
Yeah, so at the end of a conversation, you can either offer links to a survey tool that you as a brand have, or you could offer it as an in-channel experience. So really what we would call a delegation bot. So you're actually handing over from a human agent the conversation to a virtual agent, and that virtual agent task is to collect feedback and then store that as part of the reporting. So there are several ways on doing that.
Okay, thank you so much. Chong has also an interesting question. Is it also possible to cover Flemish in our NLP and not only Dutch? Because that's a little bit different.
That's a question for you, Anthony, the Flemish support.
Sorry, can you repeat the question, please?
Yes. Do you also cover Flemish in your NLP and not only Dutch like most of the others?
Yes, it's a very good question, since NLP is actually two things. It's also speech, understanding speech, so in voice bots, and understanding text is actually the NLU part, understanding free text. So we have our own algorithms. It covers 125 languages, including Flemish, which is indeed different than Dutch. In text, it doesn't matter in general that much. Of course, some words are different, but that will be covered in your NLP model. But what's very interesting is the speech to text, and something also we've developed ourselves. We have our own speech engineers that have developed speech to text algorithms for Flemish, which is different than general Dutch, and thus better than Google, since they're only doing Dutch.
Okay, thank you so much. I have one other question. What would be your suggestion on how to utilize a chatbot for complex queries like billing and technical support?
Yes, definitely. So that's definitely possible with a contextual bot. It's the way you're going to build your bot. So how many intents are you going to insert in your NLP model? How far are you going into answering certain questions differently, depending on small variations in the questions? So that's all possible with a platform such as ChatLayer, where you can go very deep into the conversational design. And we have client cases such as filing claims in the insurance industry, which is not just asking a couple of questions, but goes more in details into the client's context of insurance. Is he insured for that accident, by an example? So you need a good NLP system to cope with that.
Okay, thank you so much, Anthony. I see that our time is up here, so I'm going to wrap it up. If you still want to join one of our next webinars, you still can. You can still sign up at our website, sparkcentral.com. And if you still have questions for Spark Central or ChatLayer, you can still contact us. We are always available. So I thank you for listening, and I hope to see you soon. Bye.
Thank you.